To Word Nerd, I'm Ren.
I'm John. Review Loki and Space Jam 2.
Yes, Loki and Space Jam 2. Because we watched both of these things, the end of Loki Season 1 and Space Jam 2, just a couple days ago, last week. So, let's start by talking about Loki, since that's the older of these two things. So, like I said, they just finished up their first season, so this is the first of the Marvel Disney Plus shows that we're getting that has a confirmed second season, I believe.
That is true. I don't believe Falcon and Winter Soldier or WandaVision are going to get a second season, especially WandaVision, because it really doesn't make sense with what happened at the end of the...
They pretty much wrapped that up.
Yeah.
So, Falcon and Winter Soldier could conceivably get a sequel, but I think they're going to move on to the movies and stuff. But yeah. So Loki is going to get a second season. I guess Tom Hiddleston signed on for some more of it, and which they kind of dropped hints about before, but they finally confirmed it.
Yep. By the way, this is complete spoilers.
Yes.
And we are just going to go in depth about what we liked and what we don't like.
Yep.
And do you want to go first? And
Sure.
What you liked?
Well, so we had kind of a differing opinion on Loki in general. I was not my favorite of the shows going into it. I felt like of the 6 episodes that we got in this first season, 2 of them could have been skipped and it wouldn't have lost much. I didn't care much for the episode where they're just kind of traveling in space trying to get to the one planet that's going to be destroyed, or the one where they are just on the random Loki planet, just because I don't feel like they did enough with those things. And I feel like it was kind of slow going. Now, by the time we got to the finale, I was interested and I wanted to keep watching, but I feel like it was a little bit slow, kind of picking up the pace. And I feel like there were some things about it that didn't quite make sense in terms of just like I said, the pacing was a little off. I thought the chemistry between Lady Loki or Sylvie and regular Loki was a little off. Frankly, I felt like he had more chemistry with Mobius. So I loved it when they were there, and then when Mobius wasn't there for a little while, it definitely kind of felt like it slowed down. But overall, it was enjoyable. Tom Hiddleston did a good performance. I did have issues with his characterization. I thought it was a little off. He didn't really feel like Loki. I know a lot of people have said that. I realized that this is Loki, like the 2012 version of Loki, and that he sees how his life is going to end and whatever at the beginning. And so I recognized that, but I feel like, I don't know, he still just didn't feel very Loki-ish. I mean, as someone pointed out, it's like, if you think about the timeline here, it's like a week before he was, like killing people during the Battle of New York and being like super evil and having that one-off with, that face-off with Black Widow where he talks about how he's going to make Hawkeye, like, slowly kill her and all that kind of stuff. And then, like, if we follow the timeline of this show, it's like a week later after doing all that where he's like, oh, I'm a pretty nice guy. I care about people. Here, let me put my jacket around you. You seem cold. And it's just like, wait a minute, were you not, like, a genocidal maniac, like, an hour ago? What's going on here? So I felt like that was a little bit off. But, overall, I'm certainly interested enough to watch the second season. What about you?
I actually love this series. I really thought it was the favorite out of 3. For me, this actually did stuff. For me, WandaVision and Falcon really didn't do that much until the finale, which I felt like. And for all that happened, Falcon and Winter Soldier is that Sam Wilson is the new Captain America. And in WandaVision, pretty much all we know is Wanda wants to look for her children now. And that's pretty much it. For the ending for this, it could go to any possibility. We could have multiple Spider-Mans, multiple Iron Man, multiple Doctor Strange, multiple anything. And anything could happen. And I find Kang the Conqueror, which is the guy at the end, be a compelling villain and different versions of him. And I feel like he's going to be in multiple movies and multiple TV shows. And we're actually going to get more understanding of who he is as a character. Yeah. Not like Thanos, which only appeared like 3 times, and then, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be Phase 4 Thanos, perhaps a little bit more developed this time. I mean, Thanos technically has been in the movies since, like, the Avengers, the first one when he was a blue guy. Yeah. But, like, he was basically just chilling in that space throne for, like, several years until he finally decided to come down and start doing stuff. So yeah, I mean, I like Thanos, but yeah, they could do a little bit more with his character.
I like Thanos too, but I just feel like this villain, for Thanos, we didn't get like a 30-minute speech about himself. And in this episode, Loki, episode 6, it was just pretty much Sylvie Loki talking to the villain about his ideas and what happens if you do this plan and all this stuff. And I found him very manipulative, tricksy, like Loki's like...
The actor is Jonathan Majors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, and that's one of the perils of, like, the fact that so much of Marvel information is, like, in the rumors and stuff go online, is that, you know, we already knew that Jonathan Majors had signed on to be Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And so, when he shows up in this show, if you're familiar with that rumor, then you see him and you're like, oh yeah, this is Kang the Conqueror. They really don't actually officially call him Kang the Conqueror in this show. They dance around it. They're like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I've been called many names. He who remains, a conqueror, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you know, a destroyer. Like, he plays around with it. He never actually officially says, I'm Kang the Conqueror, but we all know that's who he is. And in the show, they call him He Who Remains, and I think he's even credited as He Who Remains, but we know he's going to be Kang. But Jonathan Majors does a good job. I mean, he plays it up kind of goofy, which some people had an issue with, but I feel like, I don't know, I think that the cool thing is that we're going to see different characterizations of him. Like, this was goofy Kang. This was good Kang in terms of, like, he's bad, but he's doing it for good reasons. But he warns them that, hey, if you kill me, there's going to be worse versions of me that are not so nice, and like it's going to be a big problem. And there's actually an interesting conflict there, because Loki and Sylvie, you know, this whole time they're going over like, are we the same person? Do we have the same wants and desires? But at this point, it comes to a head where Sylvie is like, man, screw this guy. I want to kill him. He ruined my life, blah, blah, blah. And Loki's like, hey, maybe we should just chill out for a second and consider the implications of maybe if he's right, and maybe, you know, if we unleash the multiverse, this could be a problem. Like, maybe we should just talk about it for a second. And she's like, nah, I'm gonna kill him. And so she kills him, and against like Loki's wishes, and causes the multiverse. And then Loki ends up running back into the main sort of the TVA, which is the Time Variance Authority, which is this whole like group of freaking government agency that in the space that like controls time or whatever. And so he goes back to Owen Wilson's Mobius. You keep saying Morpheus, it's Mobius.
I don't know why I do that. Okay.
And B-15, who's I grew to like B-15. She's cool. I'm not sure what her actress is, but I like her. But anyway, it goes back to tell them, you know, oh no, Sylvie unleashed the multiverse. We got a problem. And a very good bit of acting on Owen Wilson's part, I have to say. He, at first, you feel like he's just like, because he's friends with Loki at this point. So you think he's just talking to Loki like, oh, okay, let's figure out what's going on. And then you realize that he doesn't recognize Loki because they've unlocked a different like universe. And so he's been reset along with everybody else. So none of these people recognize who Loki is. And so that's where it ends. And you're like, oh, snap. Like this is, it ends with the pan over of the Kang the Conqueror statue, a la like Planet of the Apes or whatever. Yep. So now we are like, oh, snap. Like what's going to happen now? And so when it ended, I was like, oh my gosh, is this over? Like what the heck? What are they doing? And then it said at the end credits that Loki will be back for season 2, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think they're talking about releasing it, or at least filming it next year.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to actually see implications of what Loki did until Spider-Man No Way Home, because I don't think Shang-Chi or Eternals are going to deal with multiverse stuff. So I feel like we're going to have to wait till December to actually see something that replicates this. Yeah,
I don't feel like Shang-Chi, at least based on the trailers, feels like it's taking place in a completely separated situation. Like it doesn't feel like it has anything to do with the main. I'm sure they're going to tie it in somehow, but there's nothing in the trailers that feels connected to the broader Marvel universe. I'm sure he's going to end up meeting the other Avengers or whatever, but like it definitely feels like it's going to be its own standalone kind of thing. Same with the Eternals. And then What If is just basically a writer's playground to experiment with a bunch of things that, like, you know, that aren't canon, but they could just play around with it. So that really, I don't think is going to have too much implication on the overall thing. Unless they decide to tie that into the multiverse, who knows? But yeah, looking forward to it. So Loki overall, I would say, is worth a watch. For me, it took a little while to get into it, but some people really liked it. So it's just like, I think it's just a taste thing. I preferred Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I prefer more grounded stuff, but a lot of people like the more spacey type stuff. So, you know, it is up to your personal taste, but it's definitely worth watching just to be able to keep up with what's going on in the universe, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely worth watching. I was one of the people who liked spacey stuff and out of control stuff, so that's why I like Loki more and stuff like that.
Well, speaking of spacey stuff, let's talk about Space Jam. Space Jam 2. Space Jam: A New Legacy. Pardon me. The $150 million sequel to Space Jam. Out of curiosity, I wonder what the budget for the original Space Jam was.
Probably way less.
The original Space Jam came out in 1993.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
And they spent like so much money on the second one with CGI. It's
Let's
just
see. The original Space Jam, directed by Joe Pytka, whatever, released in 1997, and box office of $250 million, and it was, let me see here. Oh, the budget was $80 million. So, and it was only 88 minutes.
Yep.
So a reasonable time, because the first thing I'm going to say about Space Jam 2 is why the hell was it 2 hours long?
No one knows.
It was 2 hours long. Even the original Space Jam knew there was no point in making a freaking movie with Looney Tunes and basketball players too long. like it's bonkers. It's like okay, like going back to the original, I've said before, I'm not here to say that like the original Space Jam was a brilliant masterpiece, Oscar worthy, whatever. I'm not saying that. It was goofy. It knew what it was, but that's the thing, it knew what it was. It knew it was stupid. It wasn't really trying to be anything else. And it was entertaining, and it felt genuine. It felt like they were really just trying to do something fun with the concept of what if Michael Jordan met Bugs Bunny? What would happen, And this movie literally feels like someone sat in a pitch meeting at Warner Brothers and said, hey, Disney's out here doing stuff with their properties. We got some cool properties. What if we put them all in a movie together? And that was it. Nobody talked about it anymore. Nobody said, okay, what are we going to do with it? What's the plan? Literally just, hey, stuff that Warner Brothers owns, put it in a movie. And then tell people to get HBO Max now streaming. Get your free trial today. And that's it. It's a 2-hour commercial for HBO Max. And everything that Warner Brothers owns. Which I guess Warner Brothers either owns HBO or vice versa. But clearly they're connected in some way. Yeah. But yeah, actually let me figure that out. Because let you talk about it while I figure that out.
Well, pretty much it was an advertisement. This whole movie was advertisement. Like, the least interesting part of the movie, for me, were the tunes. Like, the whole entire movie, you're just pointing out cameos. Oh, look, there is the Night King for some reason in the background. There is It, some reason in the background. There is Scooby-Doo. There's King Kong.
King Kong. There's the Wicked Witch of the West. There's Casablanca. There's freaking Game of Thrones. The Night King was in there.
Yeah. All you do for the entire movie is you look in the background and pay attention to what you see or what's familiar, and you don't pay attention to the game at all.
So yeah, it's like, but basically Warner Brothers is like the second largest media conglomerate. Warner Media is the second largest media conglomerate, I think, next to Disney. Maybe Comcast might be up there too, but they're definitely in the top like 5. And they own a bunch of stuff. Whatever Disney doesn't own is pretty much owned by Warner Brothers, or maybe Universal Comcast. So it's like, oh, well, hey, we've got movies too. Okay, maybe we don't have Marvel, but we have DC, and we have The Wizard of Oz, and a bunch of old movies that no child in the world has ever seen. Like, that's the thing. It's like they had a bunch of scenes where like the Looney Tunes were. So okay, first let's back up on the plot. The plot is wacky. So in the original Space Jam, it's like these aliens challenge the Looney Tunes to a basketball game, and then they go seek out Michael Jordan because he's the best basketball player. That kind of makes sense. In this movie, LeBron James has to seek out the Looney Tunes, but that doesn't even quite happen. It's like LeBron has 2 kids. Well, he has 3 kids. He's like, one of his oldest son is like all into basketball. His youngest son is more into video games. He wants to the only connection that LeBron appears to have with Bugs Bunny is that in the very beginning, he's a little kid. He's playing with a Game Boy, and he's playing with a Bugs Bunny game. And his basketball coach is like, hey, games, you gotta focus on basketball so you can be a good basketball player. And he throws his Game Boy in the trash and becomes a LeBron James. And so then, fast forward to the future, he's got a son, and his son is really more into video game development than he is into video games. And so it's a classic, like, your dad wants you to do a thing, and he's putting pressure on you, but I want to do something else, Dad. I want to dance. And it was like that whole, like, scene or whatever. And so then his son and LeBron and his son get into, like, a fight over, like, following his dreams or whatever. No, okay, before that, they go to some meeting, and some character played by Don Cheadle, called Al G. Rhythm, wants to put LeBron in movies or something. Yeah. I don't quite get it, but he wants to put like this animated version of LeBron in stuff. And so they show up and they're like, hey, like, we want to do this thing, and Sarah Silverman is there for some reason, and that guy from The Walking Dead. Yep. And they're just like, hey, you want to be in these movies? I literally look at this plot because I genuinely did not get it.
Basically, this guy, Al G. Rhythm, wants to suck whatever talent that LeBron James has and just use it to get outside the serververse.
Okay, yeah, so it's like it's a movie deal. So LeBron is invited with his family to the Warner Brothers studio to discuss a movie deal. LeBron dismisses the idea while Dom shows an interest in the studio's software, particularly the state-of-the-art AI Algae Rhythm. Dom expresses an interest in the future with Warner Brothers, leading to a blow argument with him and his father. Then Algae, I guess he wants to break out of virtual reality by taking LeBron. So he like kidnaps both LeBron and his son in the server somehow. He just sucks them into the computer. Nobody questions this. Nobody really says anything. It's just like it happens, and they're just like, oh, I guess we're in the computer now. Very few questions are asked, and they're just face to face with John Cheadle's character.
Okay, I just don't get how getting LeBron James talent would get you outside of the serververse. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, well, this is a very fun fact. Apparently, they had been talking about spinoffs for years after Michael Jordan refused to return for a sequel.
Yeah!
I don't blame him. So they had toyed with the idea of using Jeff Gordon, Tiger Woods, and Tony Hawk before they finally landed on LeBron. Imagine Space Jam with Jeff Gordon in NASCAR. What? But yeah, so anyway, so they get sucked to the computer, and then Don Cheadle's just like, I'm going to kidnap your son, and you're going to play a basketball game with me to get him back, or if you lose, you have to stay in the computer forever for some reason. And he's just like, okay. And so then he gets like exiled to like one of because all of the Warner Media properties are in their own little planets or whatever, so he gets sent to the Toonverse, and he's like, and it's only Bugs Bunny is there, and he meets Bugs Bunny, and he's like, hey, I need help getting some people for this like basketball game or whatever. And so LeBron actually has the right idea. He's like, so we're gonna get like really good people, like strong big people that would be good teams. Like, how about Superman? How about the Iron Giant? How about King Kong or whatever? And then Bugs Bunny's like, nah, I'd rather get all my friends, because you see the other Looney Tunes all left me because Algae Rhythm at some earlier point came and said, hey, go be in other places. And so now they're all in random other movies that Warner Brother owns for some reason. Again, that's not very well explained. So then they go to these places, and there's all these movie references and scenes. Like there's Austin Powers and Casablanca, Wizard of Oz, like different movies, and there's like Looney Tunes are in the movie. So they literally have a scene where it's like, play it again, Sam, and it's like the Sam, the like cowboy dude or whatever is playing the piano or whatever. And I'm like, what freaking child knows Casablanca?
No one.
Like, what is happening? What child knows Austin Powers and Mini-Me? Like, these are not things that kids know. It's like, oh, it's okay that it's dumb, it's a kids movie. Well, first of all, I think kids movies can still be good, but also, like, legitimately, what child is going to understand these references? It was just so insane. And like the whole thing, it literally was just references the movie. It was like, hey, look at all this stuff that we own. Oh, here's the Harry Potter universe. They played the Harry Potter music. And they went past like Game of Thrones, and like Drogon was there, and the Night King was there. Interestingly enough, none of the main characters from Game of Thrones were there.
They didn't want
the
to
Night King. Exactly. They couldn't get Kit Harington to show up and be like, the winter is coming. Kid's like, man, screw y'all. I'm gonna be in a Marvel movie. I don't need you anymore.
So, is there a single thing good about the movie? Is there one?
Yes. There's one good thing about the movie, and that is the graphics. The budget has $150 million, and the graphics are legitimately gorgeous. In most places, the CGI is really good. There's even like a meta joke. There's lots of meta jokes, but there's one where Algae really just turns the Looney Tunes from 2D animation to 3D animation. I don't really know what the purpose of that was, because it's like, oh, I'm going to turn LeBron back into a human. But these are still cartoons. Yeah. He just turns them into 3D cartoons. They're still cartoons. Yeah. But anyway, so he turns them into 3D, and at one point Daffy is looking at himself, and he's like, wow, I look expensive. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you were, Daffy. I'm sure it was expensive as hell to get these renders. Like, they're very good CGI. It looks good. The transitions and everything, the lights, it's some pretty impressive stuff. It's some beautiful CGI. Other than when they turn Don Cheadle into a buff basketball player at the end.
That
he looks like a freaking Madden NFL character from 2002.
I thought we were beyond Scorpion King, but we're not. Not even close. That was so bad. I can't believe what they did to Don Cheadle at the end.
That was wild. And speaking of Don Cheadle and really all the other actors in here, there's some LeBron is not an actor, he's a basketball player, whatever. But I have seen LeBron act in like commercials, and like he had like a cartoon series called The LeBrons for a little while. And he's not a terrible actor. You can tell he's trying. I really just think the director did not give them anything to work with, because Don Cheadle is like a freaking Saturday morning cartoon villain. Like he's like, I'm going to take over the sun of us. It's like so campy and over the top. It's like, what is happening? I just feel like nobody was really thinking like, okay, here's how you're gonna play this scene. It's just like, read the script and just who cares? Just look at the pretty colors, kids. Go get HBO Max today. It's such a joke. And not in a funny way either. It's not like a good joke. It's a cringy joke where the entire purpose of the movie's existence was for you to sit and go, oh, I recognize that thing. Yeah, I saw that movie. Oh, yeah, Rick and Morty, look at that.
I don't have a single positive thing to say about this movie. This is like the worst movie I have ever seen. I am not gonna lie. I was insulted. I wanted to die. I will never watch this movie ever again. This was the worst thing I have ever watched. And I've seen a whole bunch of shitty movies. Yeah. And this is the worst.
I mean, genuinely, like, I feel like what frustrates me the most is that it is so soulless and so corporate, and it's not even trying to be anything else. Okay, let's get real for a second, because I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, or you're just being naive. Like, of course, movies exist to sell stuff. They always have. I get it. But, like, I always compare it to, like, Pixar. Think about Pixar. Pixar movies, yes. Do they exist to sell toys? Sure. Like, is Disney going to shy away at the opportunity to sell Pixar toys? Of course not. But they still bother to tell good stories. Most Pixar movies tell really good stories and like there's artisanship and there's craftsmanship in it, even though it's ultimately, a toy commercial, but it's more than that because it's actually an entertaining, well-created piece of art. This movie is not trying to be art. It's not trying to be creative. It's not trying to be anything except a 2-hour commercial for everything that Warner Media owns. Like, it's literally just like, hey, get HBO Max today and watch these movies, or buy your kids the toys from these cartoon series that they like. Like, it's not, like I said, even the original Space Jam, sure, it was goofy, sure, it was a nostalgia grab, sure, it was a product of its time, very, very 90s, and sure, there's lots of characters and stuff, and ultimately, like, oh, hey, look, Bugs Bunny's playing basketball with Michael Jordan, isn't that fun? But, like, it still felt like somebody somewhere cared about making something entertaining and that just stood on its own merit. And this movie literally just feels like an excruciatingly long foray into just, this is the shit that Warner Brothers owns, and this is what we're going to do with it. Absolutely nothing except make you look at it. It's just like, it's frustrating to me because it just feels like you could have done something interesting with this. Like, I was telling John, well, somebody said, I think it was Jeremy Johnson said, what if they had done a scene where, like, instead of it being like LeBron and his son, what if the movie was about Kid LeBron and he was the main character and he had an adventure with the Looney Tunes, and then that's what convinced him that he wanted to be a basketball player, and then he grew up and be LeBron. That would have been a cool idea. The only reason they would have done that is because LeBron would have had as much screen time, and that's like the whole point. But the other thing that I was telling John yesterday, the way I would have written the screenplay is, what if, okay, so we want to, because they do try to push this message of like accepting people for who they are, and so like LeBron needs to learn that he needs to accept his son for who he is and not try to force him to be a basketball player or whatever. And so I'm like, so what if the situation is there's some kind of situation where they have to like beat the evil algorithm, and they have to do it with both basketball knowledge and video game knowledge, forcing LeBron and his son to work together on their skills. They have these, like, his son knows games and he knows basketball. They have to work together to, like, defeat the enemy together with their respective skills, which they kind of do toward the end, but they don't do enough of it. And it's like, that could be really interesting. And LeBron could learn, oh, maybe video games aren't dumb. Like, my son is really smart and he's got his own talents and I shouldn't try to force him to be like me. There's so much you could do with this story. As goofy as it is, you could do something with it that isn't just soul-crushingly stupid. And that's not what they chose to do. They just didn't even bother trying to make the plot make sense. It was just like, I don't know, LeBron is there, and then stuff from Game of Thrones is in the background for some god-awful reason. It's the clown! It didn't even look like the It from the movie. It looked like somebody cosplaying as It the Clown. It was so awful. Like, it just does not need to exist. I forgot it as soon as I watched it. It was, I mean, I didn't expect a masterpiece, but it was so, so very bad.
Yeah, it's the worst movie I've ever seen. Don't watch it. It's not worth watching. Even if you have HBO Max, just don't bother.
So,
just don't.
Yeah, I'm very glad we didn't spend any money on this thing. So, okay, so like backing to the, let's rate them. So, first of all, Loki. What would you rate Loki?
Loki, I really liked it. I would rate it 8 or 9.
Okay. I'd rate it about a 7. 7 out of 10. I think I already know, but how would you rate Space Jam 2?
A 0.
Legacy?
A 0. I didn't find anything redeemable about this movie.
I'm gonna give it a 1. I'll give it.
You're
I'll give
being
it a
generous.
2. I'll give it a 2.
Don't be even more generous. Jesus.
I'll give it a 2 based solely on the graphics. The graphics are pretty impressive, but everything else was trash. I'll be generous just because I know it's a multi-million-dollar film, and I know that some very intelligent people worked very hard to make the graphics look as good as they did, and I feel bad for them that their talents were wasted on this piece of trash. But yeah, it's like it could have looked worse, and I'm an animation nerd, so I definitely notice when stuff looks really bad, and I felt like the animation really was very good, given how bad everything else was. But yeah, do not recommend Loki. Do not recommend Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. I don't recommend it at all. I couldn't recommend it less if I tried. It's not worth it, I promise. All right, well, I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. We have a little bit while before the next Marvel movie. So how about you guys leave in the comments below? I have a couple ideas. One of my ideas for the next video is that we'll watch like the beginning Marvel movies like Iron Man and we'll talk about it. Or we watch something really bad like Space Jam, and then we just shit upon it like we just now did.
We also still have those horror movies that we haven't watched and watched yet. We need to do those. So yeah, there's definitely more stuff coming down the pipeline. We will be back soon with some more content for you. Daddy made you your favorite open wide. I hope you've seen Bo Burnham, the new special, because it's worth it. Side note, but you should go watch it if you haven't. Also, on my podcast, we're going to cross-promote here that I do with my best friend instead of my boyfriend. We did talk about Bo Burnham's special recently, and that will be an episode that will be uploaded probably this week. So stay tuned. All right, peace.
Peace.